Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome, everyone. This is Walking Between the Raindrops, and we're going to explore things that affect you even on a daily basis and how to deal with those things. Specifically, we're talking about beliefs that we have, beliefs that we got when we were kids, beliefs that we didn't know that we had. And she can peel those layers back and help us understand it a little bit better. She's a master alchemist, and she is back with us. Debbie Unterman is here. Welcome, Debbie. How you doing?
I am well. It seems that other people are getting a little bit under the weather, but I'm staying above it.
That's what you got to do. You know, you have to believe you can.
Yeah, and a lot of those beliefs are very subconscious. Some of them come from past lives, like we were talking about last time, about our joint Aquarius eclipse you and I share, although you have it in the lunar place where you're learning more about it. I have it in the solar. So last week I remember telling you that you were kind of like royalty, but not quite king or queen. Well, in mine, it says I probably was a king or a queen.
Seriously?
And yeah, you know, something like that. Who knows when? I never went to a past life when I was, but part of that that lesson is to see equality among people. And when I read that, I was like, but I'm very fair and don't really see race or class. But then I started thinking back to when I was younger. And then I started thinking about a couple of things that I have to be embarrassed about that people have told me, reminded me that I said, and I had forgotten. So one was when I lived in Port Washington, Long Island, which is a upper middle class, you know, right on the water there. East Egg in the Great Gatsby.
It's for anybody that doesn't know, it's the North Shore of Long Island. Now, there's all different areas up there, but there's a lot of upper class spots. Brookville is up there. Let's put it this way: Billy Joel lives up in that area, so there's some spots that are kind of affluent.
I'm always living in the Sands Point area, which is also where the Gatsby house was.
Yes.
Because since it is a little peninsula, the water is owned by the real rich, IBM Country Club, things like that. Simon and Schuster, the Schusters, I think of was it the Schusters or was it Carly Simon? One of them anyway. Has houses there. So I was not in that neighborhood, but I was in a nice one. And when a friend of mine moved in from Manhattan, her father was a band leader, kind of cool. He made his living playing, I guess weddings, bar mitzvahs and clubs. And she reminded me, that was when we were about 16, I think she moved in. So I had forgotten that as we were walking to the bus stop one day, I said to her, this is embarrassing. So how does your family afford to live in this neighborhood on the income of your father as a musician? And, she didn't tell me till years later that I had said that, and I had to go, oh no, did I really?
Wow. I mean, that's, one would think that at the same time, but where did you get that from? Why did you
past
have
lives, I guess, is what it's saying. Like I would have rejected that I ever felt that way, except that she told me I did. I did actually say that. So
do you think it came from
said,
something you heard from maybe your parents? Would they have been aware of what her father does and the dynamics there?
No, it came from me. It was my belief that.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say, I am going to say that it's a reasonable thought that maybe, we don't know what the salaries are of certain people. I know that sometimes you see it online, they'll pick like 25 professions and they'll give you the salaries of them. And some of them you're like, they make that much. And then there's others like they're saving lives and they're only making that much. So you might not know, but as you were saying that, I was getting visuals, downloads from my childhood of things that I heard family connected about others that I don't, now I look at it as like, wow, I can't believe, part of my family would say things like that. It was just like one of those, it was a different time back then, but it just, those are the limiting beliefs. I don't have them now. Absolutely not. But you could carry those things with you.
We are entering the age of Aquarius, which is the universal feeling that we are all one, that those things don't matter. That materialism really was never that important to me, which is why I like to prove it by saying that when I turned 65 and started getting Social Security, I have the lowest Social Security payment that I ever heard of. Most people are like, oh, can I live on my Social Security of $1,600 a month? Well, mine was $160 a month. That's because I didn't have jobs where you pay in because you're going to get the payback.
Yep.
I also never felt the need for the security of health insurance. I never had a job that gave me health insurance. But a lot of people live with that belief that they are insecure if they don't have a job that, in the old days, I mean, my father got the gold watch. He really did stay with one company long enough to retire from it, because that used to be a belief, right? That has gone out the window.
It's almost laughable.
It is. Kids these days that think they're going to get a job that's going to give them the security that they'll retire with a pension fund, or I don't know. I mean, I guess my brother's, he just turned 65 a couple of years ago, and he does have a pension, but he's
Well,
still
sure. I mean, yeah.
older.
Service oriented. If you're if we're talking teachers, if we're talking police and things like that, there's a pension attached to that. But everything else, no.
Thinks they're going to retire from the corporation that they work for now. And corporations got smart and they get rid of people just before it.
Yep.
Just before they would be eligible, all of a sudden they're downsized.
Yep.
So it's a little bit of a game too, that the rich got richer and figured out how to keep more of their money and give less. And, the belief system, again, that the one with the most toys in the end wins. Well, you can't take your toys with you. It really is not even anything based in a sense of security. There's only so much you can make that makes your life happier. And then there's diminished returns. I think we talked about that once.
Sure.
The more you make doesn't make you happier.
No. And the one thing I've learned over the past couple of years, that nothing's guaranteed. That's the reality. Something you have right now, someone you have right, whatever it might be, not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Not guaranteed to that job. You think, well, I've been there 10 years. It's great. You don't know what's going to happen. Nothing is guaranteed. I guess taxes are, but that's about it.
Then taxes. Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to minimize things, but that is the reality. Those are what's guaranteed. If you say anything can punch a hole in that, aside from death and taxes, we've heard it since we were kids, but it seems to be the truth. It really is. Right?
Belief systems, though, give people a sense of belonging, and that creates a security, like to belong to a certain religion, where everyone who goes to that church or temple does believe the same thing, and therefore to surround yourself with those people makes you feel safe. And what we do is we get more evidence that our beliefs are real by surrounding ourselves with a smaller and smaller group of people, instead of expanding our consciousness and opening up. And what the latest brain science is saying is that those beliefs become like rocks solid rocks inside your mind that they're really hard to chip away, because all we do is we look for more evidence that supports those limiting beliefs. And like we talked about, beliefs they're not real, they're not facts. We have the blind man with the elephant, that each believes they know the truth about the elephant because they touched the tail, or they touched the trunk, or they touched the ear. It's only whatever they believe. And by keeping on using this thing that makes us smaller and smaller, it really keeps us from this universal feeling that we are all one. And then I look at shootings that are happening now, beatings that are happening now, states that are banning books because of beliefs, and people who look at other people and believe there's something wrong with them. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Jazz, I Am Jazz, I can't think of her last name. She's a transgendered girl who knew when she was a little person that she was a girl in a boy's body, and she wrote a book about it. And that book helped a lot of trans kids for a long time to not feel so alone. Because who are we to say that, just like a heart defect, that there wasn't a mistake that needs to be remedied? And we don't mind remedying a heart defect in people. We give them a heart transplant or fix the valves or whatever it is. But just because gender is something that people want to hold on to and say, no, there's only two genders, you have to be the one you were born with, there couldn't have been a mistake. How do we know when we're not living in the body? That body, that person is looking out of their eyes, and they are having an experience. And when they look down, they're like, wait a minute, there has been a mistake made. I know that I have all the feelings of being something else. And we can talk about transgender, we can talk about being gay. And, you know, one of the things that happened with the gay movement, I'd say that made people in their belief systems more comfortable with it, was the idea that, oh, they can't help it. They were born this way. And they're just like drunks, alcoholics. Oh, those poor people were born with a gene that makes them susceptible. And we just have to allow them to be what they are and kind of pity them. But I don't believe that we necessarily were born that way every time. In fact, in college, I did a paper on 7 different reasons for lesbianism. And definitely many of them were choices. There can be the choice that there was sexual abuse, and a woman cannot now allow for heterosexual sex. It's just too dangerous, too painful, too traumatic. There's also one thing that I see a lot is that the idea of marriage, the idea that we get married until death do us part, was a great idea when boys were getting married at about 15, 16, and they were dying in their 30s or 40s. And that would be just enough time to bring up the kids and have another generation, right? Generations are supposed to be 20 years apart. And now the next generation takes over. But now that we're living so much longer, I feel that a lot of I'd say women more than men for some reason, have two lives. They have a life of doing the prescribed thing, the falling in love with the prince, that's supposed to be happily ever after. Fairy tales never do the after. They end at the falling in love and the wedding, and that's always romantic and easy to applaud for. But what about when the both of you have lived your now, if you get married at 20 and now you've been together 20 years, the kids are just about out of the house, then you're 50 or 60, you're empty nesters, and suddenly you don't have the children that you need to bring up together, because that is a good idea to stay together for the children, because divorce, we see what that does. And it is, I do believe that humans are created just like other animals to, raise their young. Of course, in some animal species, the young go away, the dogs and cats start biting at the puppies or kittens after a while. It's like, okay, get out of here. And they don't care if they were your mother or not, it's just fight for the food dish,
So let's talk about that for a second. That's an interesting viewpoint, Debbie. So if I'm hearing you right, the concept of two people getting married, having children, having the life shouldn't be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to understand, shouldn't be something that should necessarily continue your entire life. It could end when the kids are older and now it's time for part two in your life, and then you move on to another life. That's how you're saying. Okay.
Do you see it happening with our 50% divorce rate? Doesn't it seem, if we were going to look at reality instead of beliefs, and we have this belief that you stay together till death do you part, then we'd have 100% marriages. There wouldn't be divorces.
Now, hold on. Okay. And I'm not saying I disagree with you. However, the divorce rate and all of that going on, couldn't that go back to the beliefs that we have, that we got from our parents, for whatever reason that may be, where we can't cohabitate with somebody properly in a relationship because, quite frankly, we're all screwed up. So there it falls apart.
Well, because there are parents that do stay together forever.
Sure.
So that's a chicken and egg thing. That's a which happened first. My father came from a divorced family, which in the 30s, you didn't really get divorced, but his mother did. But he stayed with his wife until she died in 2000 of Alzheimer's, my mom. And now he's in his second relationship that's been over 20 years.
That's different. I mean, she passed, but I'm just trying to better understand if, and there's many exceptions to it where two people get together, and even if they had beliefs, it all kind of works, and then happily ever after, and they're together forever. But the couples that don't stay together, I'm getting from you that it could be a belief that, all right, it's time to move on. Kids are grown, just about out of the house, on to phase two of the life. Let's get divorced. I'm out of here. But are you looking at it that way? Not you, but the couples, are they looking at it that way because they had limiting beliefs? And people don't just move apart from each other just because. There are reasons. Their relationship crumbled, it fell apart. Why did it fall apart? Is it because many times that there were things put in them by their parents in terms of beliefs or issues or unresolved traumas or whatever it might be, that's why they couldn't carry on that relationship?
I would say that I often find in my clients is that you go back to when they met the person, and that's the beliefs that were off. It's not what happened subsequently. That they weren't really compatible. They weren't really ready to mesh. Some people, how many people, and I find this interesting too, because I started talking about lesbianism, and I was going to say that a lot of times So a woman does her whole child rearing, being married, heterosexual thing, then suddenly falls in love with a woman.
Happens, sure.
But we also have a lot of people that I even know or have heard of who find their childhood sweetheart and then get married to him after they kind of longed for each other their whole life, but something, their father didn't like him, or something kept them apart back then, and so they married the one they were supposed to marry.
Well,
So
okay, I get it.
more of the beginning of the relationship, and
That's
then they
that, but
kind of correct.
that's an anomaly, where they met later in life, where they, they were together, they cared about each other, they kind of fell apart. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just broke apart, just the way life went, and then they got
Married someone
together.
else. They just didn't stay together, and then they find them on Facebook. They search for them. They're still in their mind. The heart never got
Over them.
frozen to that person. It was always open, but the door was closed. And so as soon as that door opens, they remember. And they have a lot. I mean, even your own friends from high school, do you notice as you go to the reunions, first there's all these little cliques during high school. Then you go to the 10th reunion, you still kind of have the little cliques, the 20th, the 30th, and I don't know how many you've been to, but by the time you hit like the 20th, 30th, 40th, suddenly you're all one. You're all from the same high school, and the cliques are gone.
100 billion%. I even experienced it. It was, oh gosh, like 2001. I was getting divorced, and I ran into this guy who was like, the cool dude, and his brother was in a band, and like, these brothers are like pedestals. You walk by, it's like these are the guys. And I remember standing at the bar with this guy I graduated with, and he was getting divorced too, and we're like, and I was like the geeky kid, I was the AV squad, Now it was the great equalizer. We're the same. Hey man, how's it going? You too? Yeah, me too. It's like we were the same. We're at the same level at that point. But I don't know. We may disagree here in terms of people not staying together, because, and it's a lot of what you said before, the limiting beliefs or the beliefs that somebody has from they haven't healed from, and they went into relationships and it didn't work because they have issues. Both of them, they have issues, and it could be toxic, or it just didn't work out because of the past, and things that they didn't heal from. The traumas could be, and it could be what we've always said before. Like you could have heard something in the hallway when you were 3, 5 years old or whatever, carried that through your entire life, and that screwed up those relationships until you find it out and fix it.
What Mark Waldman, and this is where I'm getting this new information about the brain and about beliefs being like these rocks that continue to get bigger and bigger and more solid as we gain the evidence about them, that it's values that will cut through them. He wants people to focus more on their values and not their beliefs. And I think that can be, because core values, when I created actually a quiz, a relationship compatibility quiz, and some of them are little itty bitty, do you like to go camping or do you like to stay in a Marriott? Some things are just differences. Do you like to go visiting your family, or do you like to go someplace without family? Those can be solved. But core values, do you want children? Do you want the children to be brought up under a religion? Do you want them to go to a school or be homeschooled? Real core values. And when kids come into the picture, they can definitely clash, because sometimes people don't, they go to the happily ever after, and they go to the wedding chapel and everything is good, and they forgot to think about that. And so it's not always beliefs that's going to break them up, but values can clash.
Sure.
And you can get really clear about what was your value that you weren't so sure about when you were younger. We have to remember too that the brain they have found is not fully developed. Girls, they say 25, boys 27. That is when my uncle wasn't married at 26. His mother, my grandmother, was going nuts that, that he was so old and still a bachelor. Back then, you were supposed to, if you did go to college, had to be right around that 18 to 21, or it was too late for you. And then we had the thing in the 80s about if a woman wasn't married by 40, it was too late. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
a total bullshit. You don't believe
It's true. It's true. I will say this. And this is, in my experience. So people reveal themselves in the beginning. So if you meet somebody in any kind of relationship, pretty much so, if you watch, if you are aware of it, might not be, at the first meeting, but people reveal themselves in the beginning, early stages of any type of relationship. You have to be aware. Would you agree with that?
I do, and I do like to go back to the first time people met. I was seeing some star on, ET or something talk about how the first time I met this guy, I thought he was, I didn't want anything to do with him on set. He was a nuisance. And then, I got to know him and fell in love with him. But usually it's the opposite. Usually it's that the first time you met, you said, whoa, there's something a little off. But then you get to know them, and then suddenly your compassion grows. You're like, oh, he's not so bad. I understand why he's this way. Oh, he had a mother and a father that did this to him, and therefore, oh, I can help him. Or, oh, it's so endearing.
Red light, red light.
Yeah.
It's like, you meet some guy meets a girl and she says, and she's with her girlfriend, says, oh yeah, well, I cheated with my girlfriend on my husband. It was, really cool. Not a big deal. Oh, hey, that's really cool. You're with your girlfriend. That's great. And what is she telling you? She cheats, number one. Her morals are, low. A guy may look at that and say, well, that's kind of cool. She hooked up with her best friend while she was married to a guy. The signs are all there. You have to see them. But what happens more times than not, somebody looks at the other person and says, oh, they're really cool. They're really hot. Wow. Wow, we got a synergy. We got an energy. You overlook all that stuff. You just overlook it when you shouldn't.
Understanding, and which is good, but it's also codependent. We're now looking through rose-colored glasses and blinders instead of really seeing them. So before we go, let me just make sure I get some of the facts, so I'm not just saying things that I want them to know what this person, Mark Waldman, is really saying. He says there's a new neuroscience discovery that may surprise you. Our most permanent memories are our most sacred beliefs, be they personal, political, social, or religious. Each time we think about these beliefs, the synaptic connections that hold them in place get stronger and begin to unconsciously influence us, often for the rest of our lives. When we encounter someone who holds a different or opposing belief, it literally creates a form of neural dissonance, which is like cognitive dissonance, but now he's talking about the actual neurological connections that is happening. He's seeing them in the brain. And no matter how hard we try, we can't get rid of them. This idea of cognitive dissonance, of having to surround ourselves by the people who have the same beliefs, and this thing going on in Florida and other places, I think 37 states are banning books that go against beliefs. This is dangerous, brother. This is them not wanting us to expand our minds, but wanting us to close our minds and just believe the same thing that one person, a governor of a state, believes. And now he wants everyone to believe the same thing and not open their minds and read more books, but close them. I mean, this critical race theory thing is insane. We don't want anyone to feel bad about their race, so we won't teach that white people were mean to Indians and Black people. We don't want them to feel bad. That's ridiculous. What, take out the Trail of Tears? Take out slavery? Take out buying Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, from Indians who didn't own it, who just lived there and kicking them. I mean, this is insanity.
It is, whether good or bad in these situations, it's history. And what
It's
do we
history.
do? We learn from history.
Exactly.
Many times not to repeat it.
Right. To unwrite history or rewrite it, that we take out the things that are going to hurt someone, but then it's okay to beat up on a Black person and everybody stand around like that's just something we do. We have to rethink and go to values.
It defies logic. It just doesn't, the things don't compute.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. Wow.
But they believe they have the right. These squads, they have the right. That's a belief.
Yeah.
So go beyond beliefs, right?
Thank you. Really, there it is. Wow. We got deep today. Oof.
Yeah, I can get deep.
Yeah, well, it's all good,
it was time.
And interesting thoughts, you have opinions, I have opinions. Sometimes we have the same opinions, sometimes maybe a little bit not, but all good. Yeah, we're actually way over time. So
okay.
That's a fact. That's not an opinion. GoBeyondBeliefs.com is your website, and you work with people who have beliefs and don't want to have them anymore. The beliefs that limit them from moving forward in their lives, right?
Find out where they came from and screw in a new value, right?
Yeah.
It will allow them to expand those beliefs.
Absolutely. It's not, hypnotherapy, all of this, it's not mind programming. It's you not wanting to have things that you were exposed to maybe when you were young, a trauma that is holding you, a belief that's holding you back from moving your life forward. Debbie, always great having you on here with this. Yeah.
What I'm going to do is have a guest who helped me. She didn't help me write. She just typed up the Everything's Perfect 10 Ways to Know. And we'll go back through that. Awesome. Okay, with Michelle Ayers.
And I'd love to hear her viewpoint on that. Just somebody, another person there and their thoughts about all the things that we've talked about in the past, the 7 ways to know that everything is perfect. So yeah, we'll do that next week.
Three of us all talking.
Yeah.
We'll try to go fast.
All good. Yeah, it took us like 5 weeks to get through the 7 items. So we'll see if we can all done in 1 week. All right, Debbie, thank you so much. Be well, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Yep, next week.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.